This is the first, and probably only time I'm going to put a warning at the start of a video. If you genuinely suffer from epilepsy, you should either take caution or stop watching this video right now. Consider this your only warning. Are you ready? Alright, here we go. What you're witnessing here is Space Beast Fright, a 2022 first-person shooter made by the indie developer Nornware. Although it was officially released last year, it's been available on early access since 2015. I've been watching how it's changed over the years, and it's only gotten better since its first release. The final result is some of the most intense co-op FPS action I've ever experienced. Let's jump right in. Space Beast Fright is a pure arcade-style game. It's all gameplay, all action, and no plot. But there is a basic setting. You play as a space marine who boards abandoned spaceships to recover important data. The catch is that they're infested with space beasts, who are hell-bent on chasing you down and consuming your face. Your goal is to blast your way through them, grab the data, detonate the ship, and get out. But you've clearly noticed that first part by now. When I say you're blasting away the space beasts, I mean that 200%. Every round you fire is like a goddamn flashbang. And the fact that most areas are poorly lit only enhances the scorching of your eyeballs. The title screen clearly states that this game will melt your face, and you're playing at your own risk. It's absolutely not joking around. I've only played this game in a lit room, but if I were to turn off the lights and try it, I think I need a welding mask to keep my vision healthy. If you really want to, you can turn down the muzzle flash in the options menu, but you'd also be erasing part of the game's identity in the process. So try not to let it come to that. When you're actually able to see the rest of the game that's hiding behind your huge fuck-off explosion gun, you'll notice that the levels come in various designs. Standard modes of play will be on randomly generated maps, but you can play custom ones too. There's a bunch of different themes that each map can use, which have appropriate sci-fi names as well. So assuming you're playing the normal game modes, no two ships will be the same, both in layout and appearance. Some of them can also be covered in biomass to give you that feeling of entering a xeno hive. You'll even see a bit of fog and some water dripping from the ceiling, just like in Aliens. While they're neat little effects, the game relies on distance for most things to look good, since everything becomes murkier the closer you get. It's not the most graphically impressive game, but that hardly detracts from the overall experience. As a matter of fact, the visuals still manage to shine in other areas, with the combat being one strong point. When you've lit up a hallway full of xenos and the smoke is cleared, you can see the smouldering remains of the space beasts in little pieces, alongside copious amounts of blood and God knows what else dripping from the ceiling.
I'll never eat calamari again.
This game nails the feeling of intense combat, both during and afterwards. The other area where I think the game does well graphically is with the lighting, and I don't just mean the absurd muzzle flash. The corridors and rooms of every ship will be dimly lit by info displays and light fixtures. It makes the perfect setup for a creepy abandoned ship with an unseen threat. Shooting an automatic weapon is the best way of illuminating everything, but if you don't want to constantly burn ammo, you'll be relying on your torch. However, it's limited to a range of just several meters in front of you, even at full power. It keeps anything beyond that shrouded in darkness, so you'll still get the space beast taking you by surprise. So you might wonder, well, what's the point then? Well, if you have no torch, you won't see most things until they're right on top of you, making life a lot easier for your xeno friends. The torch lets you see just enough to be useful, but not too much as to ruin the surprise of what's up ahead. It's a good balance that makes the game that much more thrilling. And speaking of useful things, the HUD tells you almost everything you need to know at all times, while also spitting in the face of minimalist UIs. There's way too much information on screen at once, and I love it. It's not obnoxious enough to get in the way of the gameplay though, and the notification text in the center of the screen only lasts for a couple of seconds, so it doesn't try to seriously impede your vision. Another part of the HUD that I like are the windows that show you what your teammates are doing at all times. It's handy for checking on them at a moment's notice to see whether they're proceeding smoothly or getting their face chomped off. If you get killed, you'll still be able to spectate what everyone's doing until either you respawn or the mission ends, so you'll always be in the know 100% of the time. If you find it distracting, you can turn it off at any point, but you'll still have a text log on the side of the screen that updates you on what's happening. As much as the visuals immerse you into the experience, the game's audio does an equally impressive job. When you first board the ship, the only things you'll hear are your suit clunking around and the creepy ambience of something in the distance. It really makes you feel like you've just entered a ship right out of the Alien universe. This is a bit of a recurring theme, as you've probably noticed. Aliens was one of the inspirations for the game according to the developer, and it definitely shows. It's fairly prominent in the audio design, as many of the sound effects are pretty close to the ones from the movie. If you're a fan of the pulse rifle, then you might be disappointed to learn that there isn't a real equivalent here. But the good news is that every weapon in the game sounds great in their own right. This makes it all the more satisfying when you're unloading them into a room that's being converted into a Xeno breeding ground. Their sound effects also change with the ammo upgrades that you can unlock, which can make them sound even better. There is another layer to all of the elements that build up the suspense and thrills, which is the game's soundtrack. It'll start off as an ambient piece until your motion tracker picks up a nearby enemy. From there, it'll gradually build up until you come face to face with a whole swarm, at which point it'll go full on. There's a nice variety of music tracks that all sound pretty damn cool. They do an excellent job of enhancing the experience, and making you feel like you can die at any moment while gunning down hordes of Xenos. That is, until the power goes out, at which point the music will suddenly stop. Until you turn it back on, you'll be fighting Xenos in a dark, quiet ship with no music cues. So before jumping into the chaos, you've got a bunch of map options for how you want each mission to play out. As I mentioned earlier, you can choose to play on custom maps or randomly generated ones. There are options for tweaking the infestation rate, how many useful assets that spawn, and so on. The only thing that the difficulties change is the spawn rate of breaches, where the Xenos come from, and how often the Xenos themselves spawn from the breaches. The quote-unquote normal difficulty is actually the hard setting, which definitely lives up to its name. Even the easy difficulties can still see you obliterated if you make one wrong move, so try not to underestimate anything here. Outside of the mission settings, your only other options are your choice of weaponry. They're all fairly powerful in their own right, with some actually being nice enough to let you see what you're shooting at. The assault rifle and SMG are the worst offenders when it comes to muzzle flash. If you don't want to turn it down in the settings, but would also like to see what you're doing, then the shotgun and hammer guns will be your best friends. So once you're geared up and shoved into your suit, you'll let loose into a ship. Your first goal is to download all of the data cores. This is often easier said than done. Some of them will be in empty corridors ripe for the taking, while others will have obstacles, to say the least. When you first start out, you'll truly be going into the unknown, as your only way of finding them is with a proximity sensor. Sometimes you'll have to do some guesswork to find the correct locations, as the map layouts can get a bit tricky. Downloading a data core is as simple as right-clicking it and waiting. But every so often, you'll have a lot of them to get through before you can do the next objective, so chop chop. With each one that you finish, you have a chance of obtaining a random upgrade that affects the whole party. It can be something like more ammo capacity, a better suit battery, or a pathfinder that directs you to the data cores. If you survive the mission, they'll carry over into the next one. But don't take any of the upgrades for granted though, because if you die, you lose all of them. You might feel like a badass if you survive for a while and have a lot of upgrades, but don't forget that you and your buddies are all glass cannons. No matter what, you'll still go down screaming if the Xenos get to you. Before long, you'll encounter the titular space beasts at some point. If you happen to be scared of big flesh-eating alien monsters, then don't worry, because your guns never have to be reloaded, so you're free to dump hundreds of rounds at them in one go. But you'll find that they're actually not that tough to take down. The small astro creeps only take a single round, while the actual space beasts themselves only need a couple of shots or a burst to destroy. What makes them dangerous though, is that the beasts will insta-kill you on contact, while the astro creeps will attach to your face before munching away. They can come at you solo, or in a swarm that requires an ammo dump to survive. If you get surrounded, you'll be the one on the receiving end of the ripping and tearing. Usually you'll know when the Xenos are nearby, thankfully, because alongside the effect with the music I mentioned earlier, your field of view will increase depending on their proximity, until it gets to Quake Pro levels. You'll also move considerably faster at a similar rate, to the point where you can run as fast as them if they're right on your tail. There is a little trick that the beasts can do to catch you off guard though. If there's enough biomass in an area, they can stay in it and wait for you to get close before striking. They don't show up on the motion tracker because, well, they're not moving. They do stick out plain as day though, so it's only dangerous if you're not paying attention. Like I said before, the only way the Xenos can spawn is through the breaches that appear randomly throughout the ship. Sometimes they'll be in a corridor that's out of the way, and other times they can be right next to a data core. If you're playing on one of the higher difficulties, this can make your job immensely complicated. Remember, you need all the data cores if you want to finish the mission. So if you have no intention of doing a 360 and walking away, you're gonna have to man up and push on. If you want a successful run on the tougher difficulties, a simple prayer to the RNG gods probably isn't gonna cut it. You'll need to make at least a blood sacrifice if you expect any mercy. This can be a very difficult game sometimes. The developer himself said that he wanted to make a game that was similar to old school arcade games that had a punishing difficulty. So if that's the goal, I'd say he achieved it. Even if you're playing solo, you won't be alone in your mission. You can find a random number of sentry guns on each ship that light up any and all Xenos on site once they're activated. The amount of help that they offer is left up to the RNG, as their locations are randomized like most other things in the game. The ones found next to breaches are a godsend, while others being in some random corridor are situationally useful at best. They do have other limitations though. For one, they can't shoot if you're blocking their aim. Your character model has the dimensions of a fridge, so it's fairly easy to get in their way. They'll also run out of ammo eventually, so don't expect them to hold off the Xenos forever. But at the same time, they can save you quite a bit of ammo, which is especially helpful. Speaking of which, be wary that your ammo is universal, so if you try to switch guns in the heat of the moment when one is dry, you'll be in for a nasty surprise. When you run out, you'll have to hit up one of the ammo terminals somewhere. Keep in mind that they only have a limited supply of 500 rounds, but nevertheless, you should make a habit of topping up whenever you can. Because if you get caught by the Xenos at the arse end of the map with no ammo or backup, you literally have no way of defending yourself. One advantage that you do have over the enemy is that you can press buttons and they can't, so closing doors is an effective way to block them off. This can be helpful for stopping an ambush from behind as well, so shutting the doors you pass through can give you an edge over the Xenos. They'll eventually break them down and render them unusable though, so don't take them for granted. It's also not a completely foolproof tactic, because if you suddenly face an overwhelming force and need to retreat, those closed doors are going to slow you down. So it's up to you whether you want to risk it or not. The only other way of stopping the Xenos with the onboard systems are with the fences found in the corridors. It's a simple laser wall that vaporizes anything that touches it. This also includes your suit's components if you run through them, so don't try that. If your suit does take any damage, a random part will malfunction, such as your HUD's text, the ammo display, or a combination of things. The only way to fix them is with a repair terminal. They only have 4 charges before they become useless. So if most of your suit is smashed up, you'll need to find more of them if you want to go back to normal. Once you've shot some beasts, downloaded some cores, and activated a bunch of sentries and fences, you might feel like you've got this in the bag. But then... now all those defenses are down, and the Xenos have free reign of the whole ship. Not even the doors are working anymore, which means you have to force them open. If you don't fancy playing alone in the dark with the Xenos, you'll need to hit the nearest power breaker, which will bring everything back to normal. The breakers, as well as the terminals, have an additional function too, which is to recharge your suit's power. This is used for your torch and your predator vision. The torch is crucial for navigating dark areas, and God help you if it gets damaged during a blackout. You'll be in for a hell of a time. The predator vision, officially referred to as infravision, helps you spot any nearby Xenos. But its usefulness can vary, because muzzle flash is still hot, as well as the smoke coming from the dead Xenos, for some reason. Despite all the death and destruction, you can find scientist NPCs to rescue in the ships. They'll be hiding in panic rooms somewhere, and all you need to do is guide them to the airlock. It isn't always that simple however, because sometimes when you open the door to rescue them, you'll find a space beast instead. There's almost no time to react to this either, as you have to be right next to the door for it to open. It's essentially a gamble as to what you'll get. If you do find any scientists, treat them like a newborn kitten, because even if something like a stray round hits them, they'll explode on the spot. There is an incentive to rescuing them though, as the more you rescue, the better the weapon upgrades you'll get. These affect your weapon damage and your ammo replenishment. When you first start out, you'll be using light ammo, which does the least amount of damage as you'd expect. But after rescuing a few scientists, you'll get medium ammo that lights up pink and punches through the Xenos a little better. Heavy ammo uses the blue plasma balls from Doom, and does major damage. The final type, Ultra Ammo, cuts through space beasts like a hot knife through butter. The ammo upgrades not only affect your whole team, but they also affect any sentries that you activate, which is a nice plus. So with all of that out of the way, we'll move on to what happens when you've got every one of the data cores. Your second objective is to vaporize the Xeno filth by overloading the ship's nuclear reactor. After all, it's the only way to be sure. Once you've done that, it's time to beeline it for the escape shuttle. Every single door opens up, and the Xenos will do everything in their power to take you along with them. The mission is considered successful if at least one person makes it. When a game is finished, you'll get a breakdown of everyone's stats, and you may or may not rank up, which doesn't really do anything. But you do earn something for your troubles. Every data core you get has a chance of unlocking a database entry, which can be accessed from the main menu. They don't contain any lore or backstory, but instead serve as a devlog for the history of the game's development. There's almost 200 of these to unlock, so you'll be at it for a good while if you're the completionist type. If you start getting sick of the randomized layouts, then you're in luck. You have the option to create your own maps, upload them, and download ones made by others. As always, some people out there are pretty creative when you give them the tools to make whatever they want. If you want to mix things up further, there are some slightly different game modes you can choose to play outside of standard ones. They include a mission of the day, a campaign of the week, a fixed upgrade mode, and a grind campaign. The game is already a challenge, but if you're playing it solo, you'll just be making things even harder for yourself. Playing co-op is both more forgiving and enjoyable. Surprisingly, local play is an option for the multiplayer, which is a pretty rare sight nowadays. You can also do LAN play alongside standard online play. It's great that you have all these options available, even if the LAN era is long gone by now. RIP. Whoever you decide to play with, teamwork is almost essential if you want to get through some of the missions, especially on the tougher difficulties. If you don't work together properly in a tight spot, the beasts won't hesitate to turn you into this evening's entree. You don't want to get split up too much either, lest you'll make things easier for the Xenos once again. It might not just be them you'll be worrying about, as friendly fire is on by default, and it's easier than you'd think to shoot a teammate by accident. Due to the muzzle flash and other chaotic elements, sometimes they won't see you at all during an engagement. Not only that, but it's fairly easy to shoot a teammate when an astro creep jumps on your face. You only have a small window of opportunity to shoot it off, which can often result in someone getting hit during the panic. If you do it properly, then coordinating your actions, clearing rooms, and holding the line against hordes of Xenos is great fun. One really cool bit of teamwork you can do involves the security console, which is basically a live map of the whole ship, where you can see everything, even your teammates. You can get one player to watch how the others are doing, and guide them on which way to go and point out where the Xenos are. But no matter what tactics you decide to use, it's immensely satisfying when all your work pays off and you successfully extract from the ship, leaving all the Xenos behind to deal with an overloaded reactor. It's all top-notch fun from start to finish. It's actually fairly difficult to find any real flaws with the game. It achieves everything it sets out to do. I don't remember finding any major gameplay bugs in the early access days, and I still haven't found any in the current version. But there are two technical issues that I have found. For one, alt-tabbing the game from full screen mode isn't always a good idea, as it's possible for your entire system to freeze. Luckily, this only happened to me once, but what happened on multiple occasions was my monitor just getting stuck on a black screen when I exited the game. One of my co-op buddies had some similar issues, so it wasn't just me. It's annoying, but at least the rest of the game runs perfectly fine. The enjoyment you'll get out of it is more than worth it. I can't get enough of Space Beast Terror Fright. It's an intense experience both when playing alone and with others. The phrase, "it's fun with friends," can be used for almost anything, but I feel that it really applies with this game. It's a perfect shoot things and have fun kind of game, so this easily gets a recommendation from me. Just be sure to play it with at least a friend or two, to ensure that you have the best experience. If you want to buy Space Beast Terror Fright for yourself, Steam is the only place you can get it. So that's all I've got for now. I'll be back soon for another review. Until then, take it easy.
Stinky toilet.